Broadcasting from Manhattan Beach and the World Wide Web, you're listening to CHSR, HealthyLife.net.
As a service to our listeners, this program is for general information and entertainment purposes only. CHSR HealthyLife.net does not recommend, endorse, or object to the views, products, or topics expressed or discussed by show hosts or their guests. We suggest you always consult with your own personal, medical, financial, or legal advisor.
Welcome to Center Point. I'm your host, Dr. Ron Anbar. In this show, we will discuss ways that we can journey to our own centers. This can help us access our inner resources to improve our physical abilities and health, our mental strength, our emotional well-being, and our spirituality. And I'm so honored today to have a very special guest, Dr. Roberta Temes, joining us. And good morning, Dr. Roberta.
And good morning to you, Dr. Ron. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you so very much. I want to tell our audience a little bit about you. So Dr. Roberta is a psychotherapist. She has a PhD degree in counseling psychology. And she worked at a psychotherapy practice in New York City for 35 years. She's a retired faculty member from the Downstate Medical School in Brooklyn. And recently, you moved to New Jersey, where Dr. Roberta practices non-traditional psychotherapy by telephone. That includes single-session counseling, clinical hypnosis, and the tapping cure. And Dr. Roberta, you introduced me to the tapping cure, and I want you to know that when I first started studying hypnosis, I read your book, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Hypnosis. I have to say I wasn't an idiot, but I learned a lot from it. And if I recall correctly, in a later edition, you actually cited some of my work, which I was very much appreciative of. You also wrote How to Write a Memoir in 30 Days and a book about the tapping cure, a revolutionary system for rapid relief from phobias, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and more. And some of our listeners might recognize Dr. Roberta from her advice column at True Story magazine, or maybe you heard her lecture at Rancho La Puerta Health Spa in Mexico, or at the Learning Annex. Maybe you even ran into her tapes at the Sharper Image, or purchased her weight loss CDs from hypnosisnetwork.com. In addition to all of this, Dr. Roberta is a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. Of how many grandchildren do you have?
9.
Wow. And she lives with her husband in New Jersey and in Florida. Wow, what a story. I am
that's what happens when you get older. You can do this. You can have a place up north and a nice winter place in Florida.
That's great. Or you can just live in La Jolla, California, where I have, where it's like nice weather year-round.
Every day. You're right.
Every day, that's right. So we encountered each other around our hypnosis work together, and then you also taught me about the tapping cure, and I read your book and played with it some. I'm wondering if we could start, maybe you can tell me what overlap do you have between hypnosis and tapping? How do you think about those two?
Well, I think both of them are totally underused techniques. They are both techniques that can help people physically, medically, and emotionally. And yet, because they are not considered mainstream yet, they're underutilized. I can accomplish in one session of tapping or one session of hypnosis what can take months or years using traditional methods. So, yeah, they're both alternative, they're both underutilized, they're both not known enough, and I am trying to make it my mission to let the world know that these are techniques you can use and you can benefit from.
The listeners to this program have learned quite a bit about hypnosis because I talk about it all the time, but they have not learned about tapping. Can you explain what that means?
Okay. Tapping is a method of disassociating a feeling from a thought. So your thought might be, oh my goodness, I have to go and speak in front of an audience, and I'm so scared to do that. I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm upset, I can't do that. And then you use tapping in the way you've been instructed, and you say, oh yes, I have to go speak in front of a large audience. It'll be fun, I'll do it, no problem. So the tapping cure is a way to completely erase painful feelings about the future or about the past. But it's a very specific emotion you're talking about. It can't be, oh, I want to not be nervous anymore, or I wish to calm down. It's got to be specific. A typical client might say, first of all, when they come, they'll say, I don't believe in this. I think this is woo-woo and crazy, but I'm desperate. So already we know that the tapping cure is the therapy of last resort. And a young woman recently came and she said, I often was fearful about things, and lots of people are scared about bugs, but I didn't think my fear was overwhelming. But now my job moved to a new office, and I cannot get myself to go to work. And I love my job, but the new building we're in has a bakery downstairs, and bugs come around looking for crumbs. I'm very, very scared. I'm petrified. Once I actually fell to the floor. I think I fainted. So what am I going to do? Okay, so now we know she has a true phobia, and it's irrational, but she's correct. She cannot control it, because a phobia is a persistent fear that's excessive and unreasonable and comes into play in a very specific situation. So what we did was, first I had to tell her not to talk about her past. She wanted to tell me, well, maybe I'm scared of bugs because when I was in summer camp, some kids teased me with a bug, or maybe I'm scared of bugs because when I was a teenager, part of the initiation of my sorority had to do with a bug. But it was nothing like that. Instead, I explained to her, just tell me one sentence about your fear. And the sentence she chose was, I am petrified of bugs. I said, that's not enough. I have to get more specific. We finally agreed on the sentence. I am very afraid, petrified of seeing a cockroach at work. That was her biggest fear. Once she knew that sentence and put it into words, I then taught her to tap on certain spots on her body. And in her situation, and in a lot of experience that I have, I can usually tell which tapping spots work for which people. So for her, it was her collarbone. I had her use her fingers to gently tap on her collarbone. And while she did so, she was to say a sentence that we created several times. And the sentence was, even though I'm very scared of seeing a roach at work, I'm okay. I accept myself. She said that while she tapped. We talked a while. She did it a few times. She closed her eyes, did it again, and then she stopped, opened her eyes, and I said, all right, let's talk now about going to work. She said, Dr. Roberta, I'm so embarrassed that I came for this because why would I be scared of a roach? My goodness, of course I'm going to work tomorrow. Of course. What was I scared of? And that was that. And that is typically what happens. Now, here's one reason why this is not accepted well. Nobody knows why it works. We are a scientific country in America. We want to know solutions. We want to know why things work. Why does this work? Who knows? There are a lot of theories. Some of them sound a little too way out for me. But we know it works, so maybe that's enough. And that's the tapping cure.
That is fascinating. Now, I understand you do this by phone now with some patients?
I've always done it by phone. Even way before the pandemic, I always did it by phone.
So this lady you told us about was in her own house when she did it?
Yeah. People, actually this specific one had come to my office. But I did it by phone always because people would read my book from all over, not only the country, but the world, and want to come to me. And I thought, well, why should they schlep all the way to the East Coast if they live on the West Coast or in Europe? And it seemed ridiculous, so I thought I'd try it on the phone. And I found that my results were just as good. So I always encourage people, even those who live nearby, to do it by phone.
Fascinating. And you said we don't really understand how it works. How did you learn about it?
I read a book about someone who claimed decades ago that he's the guy who brought it to America from England, and he was going to talk about it at a conference one day. So I got on his waiting list after I read the book, went to the conference, and there I had a most remarkable experience. They were just about all physicians. Most of the people were physicians. It was held in a Midtown hotel in Manhattan. And they had really come from all over. They were people like me who had read the book and were on his mailing list. He was trying to make a name for himself, which he did. And one of the people raised her hand, and she said, I'm so glad to be here because I have a phobia, and I hope you can help me. My phobia is elevators. And I want you to know that I could not book a room at this hotel because the rooms start on high floors where there's no escalator, and there'd be no way for me to get there. So I had to, and this was the years before Airbnbs. She said I had to call the Chamber of Commerce and find someone who's willing to rent a room to someone. So he said, well, good. Let me use you as the example, if you don't mind. She said, no, I appreciate it. And he went through a talk about tapping. He went through a sentence. Prior to doing that, he asked her to walk into the hallway toward the elevator and go into the elevator and let us know how scared she was. Well, she couldn't get close to the elevator. As soon as she got beyond the auditorium, in the hallway where she could see the elevator, she started trembling and she just couldn't walk toward it. Well, lo and behold, a half hour later, she was riding up and down the elevator. That's how I got into tapping. I understood that it could really work.
So besides phobias, what else does tapping help?
Oh, it can help with, let's see, people think it could really help with anxiety, with post-traumatic stress disorder, with anger. I had a guy come to me who said, I'm only here because my wife made me come. She made me come because our daughter's getting married and I refused to go to the wedding. And she wants me to go to the wedding, but I can't. I can't get myself to go because she's marrying a jerk, and I want no part of this jerk, and I want no part of this wedding, and I refuse to go, and my wife's giving me a hard time, and she thinks that maybe you could help me. So the sentence that we agreed upon was, let me see if I can remember the exact words, something like, even though I hate Paul and think he's no good, I can ignore him at the wedding. And that's exactly what happened. He went to the wedding. His wife sent me flowers after the wedding because she was so glad. And he just ignored the new son-in-law, and he went and didn't disgrace the family.
So it sounds like the statement you have people say to themselves is a form of positive talk that I employ a lot, which is, but it's acknowledging whatever the issue is. It's not pretending it's not there. So it's even though I feel X, I can deal with it.
That's right. I can deal with it. And a very good tail to put on this sentence usually is, I accept myself. Even though nobody likes me in school and no one wants to sit with me in the lunchroom, I accept myself. And then that young boy went to school and sat at the table by himself, and because he seemed so at ease, other people went and sat with him for the first time. That happens.
I love that, and I wonder, in addition to tapping, if I could add that to the positive talk that I teach, that I accept myself. I think that's really good because, indeed, as part of the therapy I do, if a patient says, I don't like this about myself, I want to get rid of something, I tell them, no, you need to embrace that. It's part of you, and it should be honored.
Right.
So it's the same kind of principle.
Right.
Now, do you think that tapping obviously causes, you said nobody understands how it works, but it obviously causes a change in how a person processes their phobia. Do you think that tapping reverberates in the brain? Because there's some work that suggests that certain rhythms can affect brain waves, for example. Do you think it does that?
I think it's possible. I think there's evidence about a lot of things. I mean, people do a rosary bead in rhythmic order, and somehow that is soothing. People stand and pray in a synagogue in a certain order. I mean, this could all be, but we don't know. Nobody really knows. That's why it's not accepted and not pushed so hard, because who knows?
Now, in hypnosis work, the authority of the therapist is part of the secret. In other words, and by authority I don't mean authoritarian, but I mean, somebody who seems well-versed in the hypnosis is going to get a better result than somebody who's, quote-unquote, trying it out. Or somebody who's had a lot of experience and is more confident in offering hypnosis instruction will get a better response, oftentimes. Do you think in the tapping cure, the therapist needs to have equal kind of security? I guess it's true in medicine in general. The authoritative physician gets better cooperation. So do you think that's true for tapping cure as well?
Probably, because otherwise why would someone come and spend money and time? And, unless they had confidence that this might work. I guess so. It's hard for me to understand it, truly. I mean, there's a whole cohort of people who believe it has to do with your chakras, but I never saw a chakra. So, I don't know.
And what is it about you, Dr. Roberta, that permits you to be so open to accept a therapy just because it works without understanding how it works? A lot of mental health professionals and medical professionals would never consider such a thing. What allows you to be so open?
I'm not afraid. If something works, if it can do no harm, why not try it? I'm just not afraid. I'm not afraid of ruining a reputation or being called, I don't know what I would be called, a renegade. No, I want to help people. And no matter if I learned that someone would be helped by watching soap operas, I would tell them to do that. And I mention that because in the course of working with people recovering from major clinical depression, I have found that watching soap operas helps them. And so I prescribe that. And, other therapists have said to me, are you crazy? No. They have to go home and watch several soap operas because it's curative for during certain stages of recovery from major depression. It's important to engage with people and relationships and understand all that in a way that cannot hurt you, and a soap opera cannot hurt you.
It's interesting because, for example, in the world of medicine, I'm a pulmonologist, as you know. We used to use a medication for asthma called theophylline, which opened up the airways. This is in the days before inhalers. And theophylline worked for our patients. And scientists had explanations for how theophylline worked, and they use it all the time. And as a pulmonologist, I used it early in my career. But it turns out we have no idea what theophylline does. What we thought worked and how it works is it doesn't work that way at all. And in today's psychiatric world, you've heard of SSRIs, of course, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which are supposed to increase the serotonin level in the brain, and that's supposed to help your depression, as an example. But we now understand that serotonin has nothing to do with depression. We've done more recent studies that shows that it's not the serotonin that seems to be affected, and yet we use SSRIs all the time, and it's a billion-dollar industry. I think we overuse it, but that's a whole other story. But the point is, even in traditional medicine, traditional mental health practice, we do things without understanding how they work. But they seem to work, so we keep doing it. This is a fascinating conversation. Look forward to continuing it after this break. This is Centerpoint with Dr. Ron Anbar.
Healing and changing children's lives with hypnosis is very real and very possible. Dr. Ron Ambar's new book, Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis, provides you meaningful stories and expert explanations to show you not only the process of hypnosis, but its many benefits for overall wellness. Whether a parent, practitioner, or medical doctor, this book opens the way to complete connection, so necessary for healing. Get your copy of Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis at Amazon.com or visit dranbar.com.
HealthyLife.net, where positive overcomes negative.
Dr. Ron Ambar and his dedicated team of healthcare providers offer unique health services to help patients overcome psychological roadblocks or use the power of their minds to improve their overall health and well-being. At Centerpoint Medicine with services in La Jolla, California and Syracuse, New York, this caring staff are waiting just to help you. Find out more at centerpointmedicine.com. Can't wait? Make your appointment now. Call 858-201-4001. That's 858-201-4001.
Audiobooks gives you instant access to over 50,000 of the best sellers and hottest book titles in romance, mystery, fiction, and many other genres. Just visit HealthyLife.net's advertiser page and click on Audiobooks to get started.
Every year since opening Centerpoint Medicine, Dr. Ron Ambar has been overwhelmed with demand for his services. So much so that he has established a first-of-its-kind franchise opportunity. As a franchise owner of the leading pediatric hypnosis counseling center in the U.S., you'll be at the forefront of an exciting sector of healthcare as you increase your revenue. With low overhead and full support, it's your time to take advantage of this franchise opportunity. Just call 858-997-3196. That's 858-997-3196.
HealthyLife.net, where positive overcomes negative.
If you are a medical or licensed healthcare professional or just anyone looking for a qualified hypnosis practitioner, then go on over to ASCH.net. That's the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis. At ASCH.net, you can get certified, attend workshops, and even find a hypnosis practitioner or consultant. ASCH provides an opportunity to learn and interact with colleagues. So whether you're a professional wanting to learn hypnosis or a patient wanting help with a problem, visit ASCH.net now.
More exhilarating talk. HealthyLife.net.
Welcome back to Centerpoint. I'm your host, Dr. Ron Anbar. We have a very special guest today, Dr. Roberta Temes, who in a way has been one of my mentors as I got involved in the hypnosis world. She was so very encouraging to me, for example, when I had a first draft of my book, Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis. She actually looked at it for me and gave me encouragement, which ultimately led to its publication just last year. It took me 20 years to get there. So, I think we've practiced about a similar length of time in our respective careers, Dr. Roberta, and I'm wondering, how did you get involved in psychology? What led up to that interest?
I think I was always interested in people. I was always interested in understanding people. When I was growing up, I didn't have too many friends. I thought they were too childish. And instead, I used to like to listen to adults talking. They would try to shoo me away and say, play with the kids. But I used to listen to them. And when I listened to them, I learned so many things that I couldn't learn from my own family. And my family was a fine, loving family. But they didn't talk they didn't complain. Everything was fine. They didn't talk that much about disappointments or complaints. But when I would listen to the ladies in the courtyard talking amongst themselves, I would hear them talk about terrible things. I didn't know terrible things existed, and I was fascinated. So I knew I wanted to do something with psychology, but as a person who's much older than you, Dr. Ron, I got married very young, had children very young, and didn't start graduate school until my children were in school themselves. So with an undergraduate degree in both psychology and English, I tried to figure out how to best use this and figured out that it would be good to think about getting the degree in some kind of way to work with people and understand them. I also felt after starting school and doing some internships that I was good at it. And I don't mean to say this in a bragging way, but I think certain people, and I suspect you are one, are just plain healers. And no matter what we do, we help people. No matter what technique we use, no matter what method we use, our people get better. And I'm not sure what it is. If we were in a different culture, they may call us other words, whether it's a shaman or a medicine man or a folk healer or something. But I think some of us not only use the traditional methods we've been taught, or the untraditional we've taught, the non-traditional, but also our own gut feelings about what's going to help this person. And I felt that I had that. And so I was good at what I did, no matter what it was. But whatever method I used, I was trained in psychoanalysis, which is very different than almost anything I do now, but occasionally a patient shows up who I think will benefit from that. But I was trained in the Freudian lay-on-the-couch psychoanalysis. And then from there, I learned other techniques of psychotherapy. And then I learned hypnosis. And then I taught myself tapping. And now I'm playing around with some other things. But all in all, I just think it was the right thing for me to do. And one of the advantages I had is that I didn't start treating people until I was in my mid to late 30s. And I think that made a big difference. I think I had a couple of decades of life experience to bring to the table first.
It's fascinating to hear. First of all, it sounds like you've been an old soul for your whole life.
Yeah.
If you were one of my patients when you were a youngster, I would say, oh, you're interested in adult subjects and interested in helping people back then. That's what I call old soul. Have you ever been called that?
Yes.
You're familiar with that. And then I also reflected that I started my counseling work at around late 30s, early 40s as well. So I'd been in a position for 15, 20 years before I got involved in it. So there's some overlap between our experiences.
Yes.
And I agree, when you're older, you have more wisdom to draw on to help our patients. When you encountered hypnosis, how did you know it was right for you, or how did you encounter it even?
Oh, I encountered it in a rather interesting way. It was when my eldest daughter was needing some oral surgery, and when I took her to the surgeon, and he would say, okay, this is not going to hurt you, you're numb, open your mouth, and he'd come at her with a very large instrument that was necessary. She would just bite down and bite him. And she was so upset about that. And we went again, and again she couldn't keep her mouth open. And finally she said to me, Mommy, can you do something? I want to cooperate, but I just can't override my body. My mouth keeps closing when I see that. So I went into work. I was working at the mental health center, and I said to everyone at our lunch break, anybody have any ideas? And one of the guys said, hey, when I was in graduate school, a hypnotist came to teach us something about hypnosis. I never really learned it, but I think this is the right thing. Why don't you check it out? And I checked it out, and I brought Karen to a hypnotist who in one session got remarkable results. And that, in fact, when I brought it to the surgeon again, and she cooperated so easily, he accused me of drugging her. He said, what did you do? What did you give her? Did you give her a benzo? Did you give it? I didn't. It was hypnosis. So that's when I decided I'd learn it. I went to a workshop. My first workshop was 3 days, psychologists and psychiatrists learning hypnosis. And it turned out I loved it, and it turned out I was good at it, because we practiced hypnotizing one another. We practiced hypnotizing the instructor, and I just felt like it was a natural fit for me, and I did well. The people I hypnotized got hypnotized, whereas not everyone did. So then I pursued it more. I found more people to learn from, and here I am.
So with the wealth of experience you've had, what do you wish the public knew about their potential to heal themselves, what you do every day? What message do you want to hear?
I guess that's such an interesting question. I guess that there's always hope that you can take care of something, because hypnosis is the original mind-body medicine. We know, as from NIH trials, and as you know, Dr. Ron, from your experience, patients hypnotized before surgery have an easier time, and surgeons complete their operations quicker. When you're hypnotized, you're very suggestible. And everyone can be hypnotized to some extent or another. And it's a wonderful technique to use. Look for a hypnotist. Hypnotists are good. If you're interested, my website is drroberta.com, drroberta.com, and on it not only will you find information, you'll find my email, and I'm happy to respond to any of your listeners' questions or comments.
Thank you so much for your generosity in spending time with us and educating us about the tapping cure and the potential of each of us to help ourselves. And I wish for you all the best and continued new adventures. It sounds like you're on a few more ones, and maybe I'll read another book of yours in the future.
Sure. That's a good idea.
And help promote it as well. So this is Dr. Ron Anbar, and this is Centerpoint.
Make-A-Wish has been granting life-changing wishes for children and families for over 40 years. A wish is something that gives children the opportunity to look outside their illness and restore a sense of childhood back to the child. With the help of donors and more than 43,000 worldwide volunteers, Make-A-Wish has collectively granted more than 520,000 wishes worldwide. Dr. Anbar has referred many patients to Make-A-Wish. To make a donation, go to worldwish.org. That's worldwish.org.
HealthyLife.net, the positive radio network.
Healing and changing children's lives with hypnosis is very real and very possible. Dr. Ron Ambar's new book, Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis, provides you meaningful stories and expert explanations to show you not only the process of hypnosis, but its many benefits for overall wellness. Whether a parent, practitioner, or medical doctor, this book opens the way to complete connection, so necessary for healing. Get your copy of Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis at Amazon.com or visit dranbar.com.
Reach your health and fitness goals. Whether you want to lose weight, learn to dance, build muscle, or just live healthy, Beachbody gives you unlimited access to the nation's most popular fitness and weight loss solutions. Visit our advertiser page and click on Beachbody now.
Dr. Ron Ambar and his dedicated team of healthcare providers offer unique health services to help patients overcome psychological roadblocks or use the power of their minds to improve their overall health and well-being. At Centerpoint Medicine with services in La Jolla, California and Syracuse, New York, this caring staff are waiting just to help you. Find out more at centerpointmedicine.com. Can't wait? Make your appointment now. Call 858-201-4001. That's 858-201-4001.
HealthyLife.net, where positive overcomes negative.
Every year since opening Centerpoint Medicine, Dr. Ron Ambar has been overwhelmed with demand for his services. So much so that he has established a first-of-its-kind franchise opportunity. As a franchise owner of the leading pediatric hypnosis counseling center in the U.S., you'll be at the forefront of an exciting sector of healthcare as you increase your revenue. With low overhead and full support, it's your time to take advantage of this franchise opportunity. Just call 858-997-3196. That's 858-997-3196.
All positive talk with a mature edge. HealthyLife.net.
Welcome back to Center Point. I'm your host, Dr. Ron Anbar. That was a fascinating conversation with Dr. Roberta, who talked about how people can find solutions through hypnosis and then through also the tapping cure. I was thinking earlier today, a student of mine asked me, what do you tell a patient who expresses suicidal ideation? And I discussed some about there's a difference between thinking I'd rather not live because the situation is so dire to actually contemplating how I might kill myself. And we certainly take suicidal ideation seriously when it's expressed by our patients. I've actually found out that this is actually a fairly common thought among teenagers that, oh, life's too hard. Wouldn't it be easier to end it without thinking how they would follow through? I would think that 20% of my patients have experienced such thinking at some point in their lives. And then the student asked me, well, what do you tell the patient? And isn't it true that people commit suicide because they find that their pain is too hard to bear, for example? And I said, yes, that is true. But what I do with patients who feel that way is I will tell them that there is always different solutions. There are always different solutions. And that's where hypnosis and tapping into your subconscious or tapping into tapping cure can help solve things in new ways. If you think about a situation in a different way, then your life can change. And this is true even if you have a physical problem. So, for example, I worked once with a young lady who had terminal cancer, but she was getting chemotherapy for it that was going to hopefully give her some extra years, and she had a lot of this new kind of chemotherapy. Well, her old chemotherapy caused her to develop a lot of nausea and vomiting. And the new chemotherapy was supposed to be even worse in terms of side effects. And so she was sent to see me, and I taught her how to use hypnosis, how to calm herself. And then I interacted with her subconscious, and we talked about her fears. Her fears didn't relate too much to dying, but it was more about how to cope and how not to suffer. And I taught her that she can change the experience of her chemotherapy through imagery. So, for example, by imagining water dripping or a waterfall, that sometimes can help prevent nausea in many patients. And she actually applied that, and she did not develop nausea with this new experimental drug she was taking as part of her new chemotherapy. In fact, she was the only one at the hospital I worked at where she did not develop nausea with that drug. And again, it speaks to the power of the mind. It's not the power of hypnosis. The power of the mind to accept a new idea of thinking in a new way to feel better. I remember another patient of mine who had very bad lung disease, and it was not cystic fibrosis. We've talked about cystic fibrosis before in this program. It was a rare kind of disease that also was going to take his life. And again, he learned how to calm himself, how to talk to his subconscious. And when his lung disease took a turn for the worse and he needed to undergo placement of chest tubes because his lungs were collapsing, he used hypnosis to remain calm. I remember one of the things that was remarkable about him is he maintained a good attitude no matter what happened. One time when he was very sick, I came to see him in the hospital, and he was so pleasant to the nurses. And they said, "How can you be so pleasant in a time like this?" He said, "Well, if I'm irritable, it's going to make everybody's day worse. So I choose to be pleasant." And that's just an important decision he made. And the beauty of it is every one of us can use this kind of thinking pattern. Each one of us can choose to think of our challenges differently, and that changes our experience with the challenge. In the tapping cure, when Dr. Roberta had the patient say, "Even though I feel I dislike something badly, I can learn to tolerate it. I accept myself," saying that while they're tapping. So what happens there? They think about the situation in a different way. And then, according to Dr. Roberta, people feel much better. We don't understand how that happens, but I do know that with positive talk, the reason people get better when they say things in a positive way, the reason they get better is they open the mind up to the possibility that things can improve. If we go back to the patient who is in terrible pain and sees no option other than dying, and when we say, well, there's a possibility of coping with your pain in a different way, people will grab it. And as they learn to think differently, they feel better. So they move away from the precipice of suicidality or depression or anxiety. So how we think has a big impact on how we feel and how we perceive pain or other challenges in our lives. And when we return from the break in a few moments, I'll give you some more examples of how you can do that in your own life to change your life experience. And that's even without hypnosis per se. So hypnosis gets you in a mindset where you're more suggestible, where you can accept things more easily. But if you buy into the idea that how we think affects our reality, then you don't need hypnosis. You've already made yourself more suggestible by thinking to yourself, I can change. I can do this, which I think is what is common with positive talk, with a tapping cure, with hypnosis, and I think a lot of the other alternative therapies with yoga, with acupressure, with acupuncture, all of those therapies have the promise of change. Chakra therapy, energy therapy, Reiki, all of these quote-unquote alternative therapies involve the thought that, hey, we apply this therapy and I will change. And that belief that I can change is key, is, I think, the key ingredient. It's also a key ingredient in the placebo effect. When you give somebody a fake drug and tell them, hey, this could help you, and the patient says, this might change me, that alone creates change. Just the thought. Early in my pulmonary career as a pulmonologist, I was aware of studies that show that over-the-counter cough medicines do not work. Compared to placebo, over-the-counter cough medicines have no benefit. And they have a lot of side effects. In fact, some of them have been taken off the market because they have stimulants in them, and people use them to get high. So when a parent said, hey, my child is coughing, please prescribe over-the-counter cough medicine, I'd say, no, they don't work. Save your money. You don't need the side effects. But that was incomplete advice. Because, and in fact, doctors kept prescribing over-the-counter cough medicine because it works. But why does it work? It works because the patient, or the parent and the kid, thinks this is going to help me. So the act of giving something and the act of receiving promotes an attitude of change that promotes healing. So rather than giving cough medicine, what I should have told the mothers, well, give them a teaspoon of chicken soup, or honey to a child over a year of age, or vitamin D, or something. The act of giving and receiving is healing because it opens the possibility of change. This is Center Point with Dr. Ron Anbar.
More than 30,000 children and adults of every race and ethnic group in the U.S. have cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a disease causing long-lasting lung infections, limiting the ability to breathe over time. Dr. Anbar participated in research that helped advance survival of cystic fibrosis patients by more than 20 years. He encourages you to donate to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation to help find a cure. It's easy to donate. Go to cff.org. That's cff.org.
HealthyLife.net, the positive radio network.
If you are a medical or licensed healthcare professional or just anyone looking for a qualified hypnosis practitioner, then go on over to ASCH.net. That's the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis. At ASCH.net, you can get certified, attend workshops, and even find a hypnosis practitioner or consultant. ASCH provides an opportunity to learn and interact with colleagues. So whether you're a professional wanting to learn hypnosis or a patient wanting help with a problem, visit ASCH.net now.
Constant Contact and your small business make a perfect fit for marketing. They give you what you need to succeed. Fast and easy email marketing at your fingertips. Visit the HealthyLife.net advertiser page and click on Constant Contact to start your marketing.
Healing and changing children's lives with hypnosis is very real and very possible. Dr. Ron Ambar's new book, Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis, provides you meaningful stories and expert explanations to show you not only the process of hypnosis, but its many benefits for overall wellness. Whether a parent, practitioner, or medical doctor, this book opens the way to complete connection, so necessary for healing. Get your copy of Changing Children's Lives with Hypnosis at Amazon.com or visit dranbar.com.
HealthyLife.net, where positive overcomes negative.
Dr. Ron Ambar and his dedicated team of healthcare providers offer unique health services to help patients overcome psychological roadblocks or use the power of their minds to improve their overall health and well-being. At Centerpoint Medicine with services in La Jolla, California and Syracuse, New York, this caring staff are waiting just to help you. Find out more at centerpointmedicine.com. Can't wait? Make your appointment now. Call 858-201-4001. That's 858-201-4001.
Radio your way. HealthyLife.net.
Welcome back to Center Point with Dr. Ron Anbar. So we've been talking today about how to cause change in one's life. We talked about different modes of therapy that promote the possibility of change. And when you believe change is possible, then many things become possible that we might have thought were impossible. I think it was Katharine Hepburn who said, impossible contains the word possible in it. So nothing is impossible because there's always possibility. So how do we do this? How do we change our reality by acknowledging there is change? So it starts with the idea that you need to think differently. How we think creates our reality. So how do you think differently? You have to look at a situation in a way that is helpful as opposed to hurtful. So, for example, this morning I saw a young man, a 9-year-old, who has had chronic headaches, recurrent headaches that sometimes make him miss school. He's an old soul like Dr. Roberta is. He thinks about the world difficulties. He wants to save the world at the age of 9. So we had this conversation just earlier today. So you went to school. You're in 3rd grade now. 3rd grade, by the way, is really boring for him because they just talk about 3rd grade stuff, and he wants to talk about the state of the world. And he developed a headache, and he had to go to the nurse, and he forgot to use hypnosis to help himself. Well, he tried when his headache was really bad, and the hypnosis didn't work, in part because once you're really involved with the physical symptoms, it's harder to think clearly. I actually told him in the future, if a headache is starting, to go ahead and calm himself and perhaps use imagery to prevent the headache and use your subconscious to help you. He has a lot of tools. But the point of this discussion is, what I'm telling you about today is, I said to him, what was good about having a headache? Why do you think the headache occurred? Why do you think you have a headache problem? Is this a good thing you have the headache problem or a bad thing? So he thinks about it, and he says, well, the fact that some days I don't feel good makes me better appreciate days when I feel good. And that was absolutely correct. Again, pretty amazing for a 9-year-old to know that, but he's an old soul. So this is true. So you suddenly realize that when something bad happens to you, it gives you a contrast to when good happens. In a world where everything is always easy, everything is always good, and you are expected and use it, then good days won't seem so good anymore because they're always good. There's nothing to contrast it to. But I pushed him further. What else is good about your headaches? And he thought, well, my mom treats me nice and gives me ice cream. I said, that's true, but she could treat you nice and give you ice cream without the headaches. What else do your headaches do for you? So he thought for a while, and he couldn't come up with an answer. And I asked him, so if you did not have your headaches, would you have met me? He says, yeah, I think I still would have met you. And I said, yeah, it's possible. But clearly he wouldn't have come to me as a patient. He would have been healthy. So the fact that we have been able to establish a relationship where I can help guide this old soul when he's in a young life, the headaches actually facilitated that. What else did the headaches help? Not sure, he said. Well, the fact you have headaches, the fact you have a challenge, prompts you to help yourself, prompts you to use your hypnosis skills, your subconscious skills, and your knowledge to get better. This having a headache is a growing experience. And I said to him, if I was programming your life, I would make sure there are adversity, that there's problems in your life. Why? Because it helps you grow. By overcoming problems, it helps you grow. So, this discussion with this young man planted the seeds of how he might confront challenges in his life. Rather than getting angry about things he can't control, rather than being depressed or saddened by a challenge, he can say, oh, this is an opportunity to grow. He can embrace the challenge. And then by thinking about it in that way, he feels a lot better because this is for him. This is going to be helpful to him. And that's a different way of thinking. Right? So rather than the headaches being terrible and obnoxious, and depressing, he can say, oh, this is for me to grow. How we think is the reality we create. I meet with children or young adults who become angry. When things don't go their way, they get angry. That's a common reason for why anger occurs, when you cannot control a situation and it just doesn't go the way you want. So you have a choice when things like that happen. You can choose to lament the fact that things don't go the way you want, or you can understand this is the way life works. Sometimes things don't go the way you want. And the good news is when they don't go the way you want, you have to find a different solution. And sometimes the solution is even better than what you had imagined. In fact, I would say many times that happens, more often than not. If you have the right attitude and something does not go your way and you look for a different solution, things often improve rapidly. Alexander Graham Bell said something to the effect of, when one door closes, another door opens. And he had a follow-up to that. Some of us spend so much time looking longingly at the door that's closed that we miss the open door. What I teach my patients and what I'm teaching the audience of this show is, the notion is, when one door closes, when something doesn't go your way, immediately look for the open door. It's there. You just have to find it. That's a final example of that. When I was moving to La Jolla looking for an office space, I found the building where I wanted my practice to be, and they had one office that was just about the right size, and I said, I want to get that office, and then they said it fell through. The office was no longer available. At first, I was upset, but my realtor, actually, he reminded me of a truth I already knew, which was, when something goes wrong, oftentimes a better solution comes about. And sure enough, another office became available in the same building, but this office was twice the size of the office I wanted to rent. And at first I said, well, that's going to cost too much money. But then I said, well, maybe it's just meant to be. So I went ahead and rented an office which was too big for me. And I had the faith to know that even though something is happening I didn't really want, the first office wasn't available, the second office was too big, that it will work out, because that's how my life works. Always. So, indeed, within 2 years, we outgrew the large office space, and I had to expand the practice. So the universe knew, or somehow things transpired, that things worked out really well with the fact I got a bigger office than I intended. In fact, we expanded it a second time a couple of years later, and the office where my first office that I rented was contiguous to all the other extra office space. If I had rented the first office, I wouldn't have been able to expand in the same way. So it all works out. Sometimes it's not evident immediately, but with the right attitude, if you're not just looking at the closed door and getting upset about how unfair life is, but look for the open door and realize there's always great opportunities. You just have to find them. Your life changes and continues for the better. This is Centerpoint with Dr. Ron Anbar.